Funny.
Remember, everybody. If you don't sin, Jesus died for nothing.
Exactly. Exactly. You got to fill up
What,
that,
what,
that
what
sin
was that?
wagon.
I
If
didn't hear
if
that clearly.
if you don't sin, Jesus died for nothing.
Oh. Um. Well,
Don't
people who
debate.
aren't
Don't put arguments. Just roll with it.
people.
Just,
No,
It's okay,
Well,
Loki. It's
no,
okay.
just Loki, just bend over and
Loki,
take it.
Just
Loki,
Perfect.
just
Loki.
Just
let it
it'll be
Just
fine.
take it.
let it
Just
I
slow
promise
roll.
it will sink in nice and
yeah.
slow. It'll be
Just
fine.
Yeah, just
We
fucking
know,
it's a
Loki,
yeah,
you have a
fucking
warm
lot of
blanket.
lube sitting there.
Warm blanket.
Damn.
Warm blanket. You don't
Uh,
argue with the quotes of fucking Einstein. You
You
just
know
let
it's
it
Friday
soak
night
in.
on a holiday. I get that vibe.
Oh
Mhm.
goodness.
Oh, dude, I'm still working.
This is
What the fuck
this
is
is a
wrong with
great
me?
convo for Easter weekend, right?
Perfect.
Easter eggs.
Yes.
Anyway, Pangburn, do you
Boil
want us
first.
to mute so you can?
No, not at all.
Oh,
I'm just letting these roll now. I'm not doing any intro. Just very rat pack style. So it's all
Gotcha.
it's all yours, zombie.
okay. Well, hi everybody. From a very liberal Portland, Oregon, we're talking today about the lack of regulation on sex toys, and I actually just want to say that from a avid sex toy consumer myself, that I buy expensive stuff, but I have on occasion bought some cheap, um, dildos, for instance, and have had really bad reactions to it. So it got me thinking, like, a lot of this, there's no labels. Loki, are you washing your dishes?
I hope so. Yeah, make sure
Getting
you.
a refilled water glass.
Oh, okay.
I realized I meant to do that before, but
He needs
He
water.
wants-
This chat's gonna get spicy, and he
Yeah.
needs
he
water
wants
for it.
he wants to
Exactly.
stay wet, right,
I was.
Claire?
I
Yeah.
thought you were pissing. To be
Kidding.
honest.
He's getting thirsty already. He heard sex
He's a
toys.
thirsty
He's like, "Oh,
bitch.
I'm gonna need some
Exactly.
water."
Get all wet, Loki.
Oh
Get
yeah.
all wet.
mhm.
Anyway,
Well, so far Claire has the most sibilant voice, so that has the
Some
sound
water.
of wetness. Right?
oh, jeez.
Don't make it awkward. Don't make
Okay,
it awkward.
this is not a pickup site, Loki.
Rolling back.
Anyway, I wanted to pose a couple questions to everyone in the chat. And the first one is, what percentage of sex toys, condoms, or lube users have ever read the FDA information on the products that they're buying? So, I would say, Loki, I know you want to go first, but I'm keeping you last.
I'll go first.
Okay.
I don't so you know me, I work in risk advisement. My business partner actually insured the top sex toy manufacturers in the country.
Ooh.
And
is it
you know,
Lilo?
and I don't know what exactly he came out of that realm. We do a lot of stuff in the entertainment realm, and that kind of took us in some of those realms. I didn't touch it per se, my side. I work in some other divisions, but he used to work in those realms, so I can speak on the liability side. Me personally, I'm old school. I don't use shit. I don't use nothing. I'm all natural. It's me and the wife. We don't need anything. Like, we know what we're doing, and we're very rhythmic and we spice it up. But we just never had the need for. Not. I mean, maybe we've been together for 11 years. Maybe 10 years from now, I'm like, oh, I got fucking gadgets and gears and rooms and fucking 50 Shades of Grim. I don't know.
Well, okay. So, I mean, that's definitely I think how I spent most of my marriage. But now that I'm divorced, I don't necessarily want to randomly go pick up dudes. So I have like a whole little collection. But let's go to I'm going to do the guys, and then Claire, and then Loki goes last, because
the question?
we got to give it to Loki. Big Lebowski, Scott, what are your thoughts? Scott?
I'm pretty much in the same basket as Grim. I mean, I don't know anything about it really.
Are you guys saying this because you're embarrassed about sex toys, or are you like legit, like just have never bought your wife like something a little fun to be a little naughty.
Oh yeah, I've bought, you know, with a girlfriend or whatever, go to a sex shop and she gets something. I've never used anything myself, like a pocket pussy or something like that. I've just never.
Yeah, no. But the question is, what percentage of sex toy, condom, or lube users have ever read the FDA information on products that they buy?
Yes,
and
I've used lube. I've never read.
I've never. I've purchased many sex toys. Never read a fucking FDA anything on the label. Not once.
Yeah, I haven't found any. Well, Loki can weigh on that, but there are FDA regulations on condoms and lubricants, but I'm not fine. Well, Loki will go into a little bit of detail, I'm sure, on the sex toy piece. I know that the typical ones that I buy, they're not labeled with any type of regulation because they're kind of underground. Oh no, where did Claire go?
I don't know.
I'm so bummed. I really wanted to weigh in. Maybe that made her nervous.
Maybe she'll be back.
Okay, yeah, I hope.
Sorry about that.
It's probably
we were in our service. I invited her in here. I didn't tell her what we were doing.
Oh,
so hopefully I didn't scare her away. I didn't know Pangburn was gonna do it. I just saw a bunch of people, and we were tired of listening to this other wackadoodle in the server, and I was like, you should come over here. Like, we're gonna probably hang out and talk about something serious.
Will you send her a message and tell her I won't put her on the spot if she doesn't want to be? Like, she can just come in here and listen. I will not ask her a question.
Yeah, she hasn't messaged me. I think she might have had to hop off just for other reasons.
Okay,
but,
okay. I just don't want to make her...
It didn't sound like she wasn't willing to talk about it. Like, it sounded like she was interested.
She's on Do Not Disturb right now, so I think she's doing something personal. That's all.
Okay, I just don't want to make her feel uncomfortable and like creeped out like the first time she's popping in here. You know.
Yeah, I don't think she's that type of person, but for sure.
Okay, cool. So Loki, do I need to restate the question, or I mean, you kind of helped me formulate that many weeks ago?
Actually, my response would probably not be a bit of a variant on the question you framed anyway. It's the question as you framed it doesn't entirely represent the way the market and the regulatory systems actually work. Most devices and products try to not be classified as medical products under FDA definitions because there's a cost of compliance and oversight and certification. And the market is generally based around trying to have high profit margins and not toss a lot of money to regulatory process. The majority of regulation happens when you can't avoid being medical devices. Condoms are inherently medical devices, so anything that's sold to be used with them also becomes a medical device, and very few other items try to get classified that way. A lot of them try to play evasive lawyer games that are outright frauds, like saying that things that are obviously for human contact, if not insertion, are novelties only, not for use in the way that they're obviously intended to be used. And that really ought to be easier to prosecute as consumer fraud. But then in brothel services or massage versus therapy or medical treatment or naturist or nudist venues, there's so much pressure in our society to try to hide things which should not be illegal, under the guise of things that are not as high political lynching targets, that you can't really deal with that without cleaning up the whole system. But as far as FDA regulation, generally there are three classes. Something like I've got a tube of Surgilube surgical lubricant in my hand. It has the registration numbers for billing most insurance companies or Medicare. It has an ingredients statement and an efficacy statement. Contains chlorhexidine gluconate, which is like Physahex or similar antiseptic, skin soaps that can create side effects if you use them excessively. But it's a sterile lubricant that essentially is the kind of thing that might be used on a glove where a doctor sticks a finger up a guy's ass for a prostate exam. And that's the highest class of regulation. It's sterile and compatible with basically all other common internal and external applications, unless the antibacterial agent in it would cause reaction in some places. On condoms, there's a lube requirement that they not damage the plastics, but they don't have to be sterile. That's class 2 regulation. The FDA only requires class 3, which is another step down, non-sterile and not causing severe skin reactions, but not an awfully high level of testing for that, for skin contact lubes. And there's an awful lot of lubes evade being classified as medical devices if they're not trying to claim condom compatibility, so they don't end up bothering with that at all. The FDA regs are essentially a stacked house of cards of lawyer games and corporate profit games, where if it's used with some other device that the FDA lays claim to, then they care more about how the devices or chemicals interact than they do about the humans.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, from a liability standpoint, I would say that things like the FDA or the government are only going to say so much about the free market, right? And so the rest of it is going to be on things like insurability and risk advisement for a company on how they act. And if they're going to sell you a cheap product that performs cheap and they know there are problems with it, they're going to wait until the noise of those problems is too heavy to switch formulas, or they can't mitigate the risk anymore when it comes to like litigation. So I would say that right now, if there's a problem out there that's causing, let's say, like 1,000 users an issue, but they sell 500,000 or a couple million of these things, then they're probably not going to look at it as something that needs to be more regulated, whether it's from a company standpoint or from a government standpoint. It's just not viable, right? So that's just from my point of view. It's just from the risk side how we're doing these things, but I don't know the numbers. I don't know how many people are getting their dick put into a pretzel and their vagina broken off on a dildo. I don't know.
Well, I mean,
that's not an issue. It's not regulated.
Right. The or like what type of latex could be used that maybe someone has latex sensitivity and ends up with, I don't know, like little bumps or, a lesion or, or an infection or, like a burning twat, who knows. But I was kind of looking
That's what
at
I call people.
What?
That's just typically what I call people, burning twats.
Burning twats. We really need a burning twat channel. Anyway, I mean, I'm looking at a lubricant that I have that I hardly ever use. Like literally, I've had this for 5 years now. I don't even know if it's an expiration date. It's still like, I don't know, 2/3 full, but it is it's called Agape. I think that's kind of odd, but it's glycerin free, silicone free, oil free, and it is supposed to be, not tested on animals and all this other stuff. And it has like a warning label, It has the ingredients on it. And then, so I searched the website, and I ended up coming up with this quality and certifications that I was then linked to a 14-page document of all of their certifications that they received in testing, the product, to include like, quality control on potency, pesticide analysis, and, just like it just kept going on, solvent analysis. I was like, wow.
They don't do those things for fun and for your pleasure, regardless of what the lube is meant for.
Are you talking about an SDS or medical
I don't know.
efficacy?
I think
because what you're describing sounds like it's an SDS, which, by the way, is an international harmonization of the former MSDS system via OSHA process. But you know the difference between an SDS and an MSDS content-wise?
No, what is it? Do we really want to know?
Well, there's a problem of people in the workplace not understanding the content of MSDS is they need to know a little bit sometimes about mechanical and structural issues, toxicology, chemistry,
right? But this
epidemiology.
Is not an MSDS or an SDS, because it has no if splashed in face, this is what you do. And all of that.
Yeah. So regardless,
the difference there is that
what's the issue though with the 14-page? Like, is that a problem?
No. I just didn't really go. Obviously, I use this product for a number of years, and I just went to it today. I just think that there's a lot of things that we may be ingesting, putting in our bodies,
for sure,
using, and we're not really looking at potential issues.
Yeah, well, I would say that when an issue does arise, that's when that information is best utilized, right? When a doctor is like trying to figure some shit out, and you just realize that you put some lube up your ass and it's probably not reacting well with you, and now you're into the hospital, and they're like, oh, okay, well, let's see what's made of, let's see how we can counter that. And a majority of people that have used that lube most likely have never had a problem. And so I can understand I don't want to be like on the other side of the fence and be like, hey, everything's all right and it's all good, don't worry about it. But I do want to make sure that we understand that if the product's going to work majority of the time, and we do have this information about what we're using and what we're putting on our bodies, it's worthy of a conversation. I don't think it's a risk or liability. But I think that if you compound things like the continued use of latex, the continued use of lubes, the continued use of man, you've got a real big fucking problem because all you do is buy edible panties and you just eat that shit by the pound. There's obviously health problems right there, and so those compounding problems I think are an issue. And I would agree with you that not only like from fucking vaccines to fucking candy companies to fucking to sex companies, none of them talk about compounding issues, right? Like, what if we mix this with that and then add that over there and then use that over there? We're gonna have a problem, and who do we sue when there is a problem? Like, I think that's a problem for sure.
Yeah. Well, I think that there's a certain I don't want to say shame, but like just I don't know how I want to phrase that. I think that regular people aren't going to like just kind of come out and go, oh my God, there's something wrong with my vajayjay, and then like let's go, or penis, let's go tell my doctor because I need to have it checked out. I'm sorry, I was getting a phone call, because I know I use some random lube or something, and march it right in, or, oh, wow, I have, anal plugs that I'm using. And this one's super pointy. This one I just got from China versus, because it's cheap and I can get 4 of them versus one regular one that that I'm buying, from America that doesn't have a point, because we all know things get specced out a little odd when people are trying to make cheap product in China, and they're doing it all, translating and doing it over the internet, or if they're lucky,
that becomes an issue too. Shenzhen special.
What?
Shenzhen special, we call it here in liability land, because things are made in China and Shenzhen very cheaply and poorly.
Right.
Just enough to pass the bar.
Shenzhen has an incredible industrial manufacturing hub where they can do stuff, to different quality levels depending on what they're contracted, some of which are relatively high.
Right, but
that's an industrial infrastructure that America's missing that we really could use.
We need to acknowledge that there's people that are here that are only sometimes after making more money versus actually having a quality product. Like, there are plenty of, like, I mentioned Lilo. It's a very good, high-end sex toy manufactured here in the United States. They have a 10-year warranty on every single one of their toys. Granted, you're paying $250, and I happen to have like 4 of them, different types, but they have a 10-year warranty. So if something goes bad, I will definitely ship it back and get a new one. There's a stainless toy manufacturer called Enjoy that's here in America. They make everything stainless, from anal plugs to
like surgical steel.
Yeah, and it's surgical stainless. But like, I've also bought some cheap shit off of Amazon, like I said, that came out pointy, and I'm like, ow, that looks like it's gonna hurt.
Which Loki, to your point, Shenzhen has still yet failed to create surgical steel that meets the guidelines of most first world nations, which is why it usually ends up in Israel in order to meet those guidelines. And then Israel takes that steel and actually makes it first world.
There's a wide quality range in China, and I know I have a friend who's tried to consult on automobile manufacturing, and they have industry that do things like put massive stamping presses on floors of buildings that really need to be on concrete foundations tied to bedrock, or they can't maintain tolerances and accuracy. There's a lot of industrial art that they're very weak on, as well as a culture of fraud. The U.S. has a culture of fraud too, but they're very different. There are some things that our industries tend to be a lot more conscientious about.
Yeah, I think we just disagree. I think Shenzhen has a notorious name for making basically cheap shit. They claim to make cheap shit, and they fail to meet the standards of quality. And that's just been a proven model of what they've been doing. So when you have basically these products that hit our shores, and you're being told to insert them into you, and they come from places like China, just know that majority of the time, I would probably say every time, they're going to meet these below standards, and they're just not going to be, look what Zombie says, affordable in a way of the liability of hurting you. And it's to be taken seriously as compared to buying some fucking earphones or a fucking speaker or something from Shenzhen that you're like, who cares if it breaks? I spent $20 on it. Wish.com. Fuck it.
Yeah.
Companies like Amazon are importing products that are made for distribution, like in Malaysia and Thailand, that don't have legal certifications to enter this country. And they're pretending that they're not doing what they are because they have a third-party nominal seller with their name on the transaction, but the product's clearing customs and going to an Amazon warehouse. Amazon consolidates listings from different vendors under the same heading on sites they control. So, Jeff Bezos should be in prison for some of the shit that, he pulls, and he can't be unaware of doing that. Some of it, the vendors would have a different listing. Some of the vendors are pretty sleazy, but Shenzhen, by the way, is a city in Guangdong that is probably in that region the most developed industrial infrastructure. The really sloppy quality control would come from the job shops out in the periphery, that aren't in the industrial center and district. Shenzhen is urban. It's the center of Guangdong. It's near Wuhan, and a lot of stuff gets transshipped or has been through Hong Kong, although China's been screwing those treaties because, Hong Kong's had preferred shipping status that China has not. So, there's a whole complicated nest of issues and different values, and very difficult to enforce against consumer fraud internationally.
So I wanted to restate this question and then actually thank Claire for coming back, and wanted to say hi to Dr. Doolittle. I saw someone else come in here, but they already took off. I don't know by their name whether they were comfortable enough with this chat or not. And no pressure on answering any of the questions, but what the first question I posed was, what percentage of sex toy, condoms, or lube users have ever read the FDA info on products they buy? And we've just been kind of chopping it up on that. I don't know if either of you are interested. I'm not trying to put you on the
chopping block.
Chopping block.
I'll admit that I've never read FDA info, and you were just bringing that up. I was just actually looking at the bottle of lube that I have here, and it's just glycerin. So I'm like, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I was telling him, Dr. Doolittle, that I have one bottle here I've had for probably 4 or 5 years, and I saw the website and I read all the ingredients and everything on here, and then there was like a 14-page document that was on all the testing of every content in it that I just read today. So I was kind of with you. I'd never read it either.
A lot of which tends to be bullshit, the way the processes are done.
Right. Well, and I mean, people could have chemical reactions to certain things. I had a friend of mine who sent me a picture of a product. I just found it again today, so I might post it. It was a spray to spray, like a flavored spray to spray down your throat to desensitize your throat so that you could deep throat.
Jesus.
Yeah. And I was like, wow, like, do people know what's in there? What is making that numbing agent, for your throat? And it was sold at Spencer's,
Do you remember that stuff that a man can take so his cum tastes like cherry or some shit?
No.
Do you remember that? Dude, swear to God, there's like flavored, there's like this stuff a man can take so that his jizz tastes like cherry. And I was like, that's gonna be the most unhealthy thing to ingest.
Try drinking pineapple juice, that works too.
Well, I mean, I've heard the pineapple juice
makes
thing.
It taste like pineapple.
Yeah. I really don't think that it's actually probably that it works, but
no, it works. I've tried it.
What it tastes like, Dr. Doolittle?
Whatever. I've had lots of guys say that
yeah.
I had to. I'm sorry.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
So you know what else? You know what else?
Then, right?
There's other.
I'm telling you, I have.
There's other foods that just go right through you, essentially, like coffee a little bit.
Yeah.
And asparagus.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of foods out there that go right through.
So just go in like 5 minutes. It'll flavor all of your.
So zombie, and would it be best then to say, hey, I have the option of going to the route of getting lubrication, right, or maybe some ingestibles that might change my experience. But wouldn't it be better to maybe just go the natural method? And what outlets are there to go for natural lube? Now, obviously, I don't know. I'm not going to go stick aloe vera.
Well, yeah,
in some crevice.
This one that I have is, that's the one thing that they kind of sell on this, that it's like all, natural and not animal tested and all sorts of other blah blah blah, and it actually is, compared to others that I've occasionally experienced, like not really, I don't know, caustic to my personal parts, and it doesn't taste so.
Poison ivy is all natural. Would you like some
well, I'm just thinking and
you can find urushiol in the sap of mangoes as well. Sometimes if you have a gunky mango that hasn't been washed,
I'm thinking more along the lines of like, how did they do anal in the 1800s?
How did they what?
I think we just triggered the YouTube algorithm by using gunky within the context of this conversation.
Let's get Claire's opinion since she came back and she really hasn't had a moment to speak on what you were asking, Zombie. Sorry to step on toes.
Oh, no. That's, yeah, I sent a message just asking if she wanted to speak or not. So,
I mean, I'm not a sexually active person currently, but in my past, I guess I've never really read any of like what's in lube or like condoms and stuff. And but I really only had sex with like 2 people, so I'm probably not one to speak this.
No. That's cool. I mean, there was a point in time I only had sex with 2 people, but that was yesterday. No, I'm totally
Well done. Well done.
I don't know. I don't know how
well played.
That one rolled as well as it did.
Well played.
I need a drum set right now to do. Anyway,
I got a cheers coming up.
I shit you not. I shit you not. I was muted and I actually went but I was
muted. There you go. I was cheersing her. Oh, cheers her twice.
Oh man.
Oh yeah, turn on. Oh, just so everyone knows, anyone who's new, your video is not live on YouTube. It's just the audio. Just FYI. So if you want to turn your video on to be more social, then fly at her.
I was just cheersing. I'll turn it up. I was just cheersing.
So question, if everyone has kind of given their input on that question, I'm not sure.
Actually, I wanted to add one more round of comparisons to that, because I pulled out a few things before we started.
That's what she said.
Okay, that's a loaded question, Loki, or a loaded statement.
Let's see. Does everyone know Johnson & Johnson products?
Yeah.
Yes.
Have you seen, remember the KY Yours and Mine ads on TV a few years back?
Johnson.
Okay.
With the one was
that's
cold
and
one
the
was
product
hot.
I looked up the FDA approvals on.
Put some icy
but I've got some KY Silky, and it turns out the Johnson & Johnson products, both the Silky and the Yours and Mine, are made in Canada, licensed through McNeil. So they don't have ingredients lists for the most part on them. You got to look on the other paperwork that came with them, because they have to fit the bilingual labels, as opposed to more product information on the actual packages. I've got a bottle, an Astroglide here, which is probably one of the more popular and reputable brands. That's the one which is water, glycerin, propylene glycol, which is like RV antifreeze, polyquaternium.
I hate that one.
And methyl and propylparaben. And the KY stuff has FDA paperwork. I think the Astroglide does, if I remember. And I've got a One Oasis, which I don't think does, water-based, paraben-free. But that one, let's see if I can frigging read this print gets smaller and smaller.
Loki, do you have a big shelf for all these loops?
I pulled stuff out of two.
Not a big shelf, but a big something else.
I imagine Loki has like a wine cellar of lubes.
No, but the one is water, glycerin, propylene glycol, hydroxycellulose, which is natural substance, polysorbate 20, sodium benzoate, disodium EDTA, lactic acid, and other preservatives, and pH stabilizer. But it doesn't have the plasticizers. But as far as the FDA approvals, the as seen on TV ads for the KY Yours and Mine, these scenes where they avoid talking about sex, but they show the couple with fireworks going off and earth-shattering orgasms, and all implied by innuendo and memes. But you go to the FDA paperwork and you have something that's common. The base of this stuff, doesn't need full testing because it's pretty much the same as these other two products. And you trace that back 4 to 7 layers deep, and it says the first one in the chain doesn't need testing because it's more or less the same as this other stuff that was grandfathered before the testing requirements. So you have something that it was never subjected to the modern testing rituals, which is the basis for subsequent approvals of a whole nested chain of other down the line newer products that never quite say that, have you proven, safety or issues with this stuff? Sure, according to the federal regulations, which basically, as long as you can play the games right, don't require much of anything serious.
This is what I'm talking about. When you're talking about chemicals that get approved, so when I work with contracts, I work with CGMP manufacturers, right? And we got to go through a list of shit. I just got off a fucking phone call right before I got on here, and it had to do with this manufacturers, got manufacturing companies all throughout the country, and they're strategically placed, mind you, to literally break off from the main holdings just in case there's a problem. But it is one of those things where we were talking to him, and it's like, and he's just like, "Am I gonna have a problem? What is this?" And I go, "Listen, there's a dirty dozen list basically that you can't be using." But when we notice these manufacturers are like, "Yes, but I can use these chemicals," but then they just compound them, and they don't have any data whatsoever as they're manufacturing about what that chemical does when it meets that other chemical. There's like no discussion in the room about this shit. Same thing happens.
Have you ever looked at a Home Depot store and the way they lay out products?
No, but I'm sure there's a method to their madness.
They'll put concentrated acid and concentrated alkali drain cleaners on the same shelf and product category, which are not exactly compatible. But they don't consider that to be a serious hazard because there is so much hazmat in the store and so many flammables, that the basic instruction for the staff who are actually trained, unlike the customers, is run for an exit, abandon everything, get out if there's ever a serious problem. The whole store is disposable, and it's a corporate structure where the stores are breakaway, and they can abandon one if that ever happens, which it doesn't very often. But the whole place is a hazmat dump.
Yeah. So imagine that, but your vagina.
Well, exactly, or your bunholio.
Well, actually, imagine that as the corporate standard for law and responsibility of a big reputable company. And so, okay, the other part, the other part in this the other part in this KY yours and mine is that they did because it's slightly different than some of the other prior art products that they linked it through. Do an efficacy and a safety claim. But the safety claim is that fewer than 15% of users in a test group reported more than trivial irritation. The efficacy claim, contrary to the TV ads, which should be consumer fraud if it weren't for lawyer standards of puffery. In other words, how much can we lie through our asses and be considered honest in lawyer talk? Is that at least 85% of people using it said that they felt something more than nothing, but nothing even close to any of the advertising claims. So, it's just, it's largely a joke as to what approvals mean where they do exist.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, regardless, so Zombie, we've clearly shown that there's been not as much regulation as you're saying and needed, but it seems like it's a much larger picture just because it has to do with really the chemical, how America is using chemicals and how they're using products. And I feel bad because for women, I think the sex toy industry, right, needs to be understood a little bit better when it comes to women. For men, we're not putting a lot of stuff in us. I get the one or two things, but it's not as sensitive as a vagina, right? It's just not. And no matter what it is, there's only one vagina, and men just don't experience it.
Yeah. I was looking at a couple things. One is like a Healthline report on how blunt tipped sex toys can injure tissue, and that made me, kind of start to think about some of this, and was looking at the FDA requirements for condoms, which Loki had already talked about, where they give a little bit of the background, where that they believe that based on that, because this is something that's put inside of us, that there needs to be some reasonable assurance of safety and effectiveness. But really, this goes into detail on how it should be, pretty much how it should be labeled, which is like, what is the product made of, not just latex, but also whatever lubricant that's on it, the expiration of those condoms, which they have an expiration date. I don't know if you guys know that. And I know from my work, there are 2 condom manufacturers really in the United States. So everything is labeled and done out of those. One is, I think, in Mississippi, and I can't remember where the other one is, but, or it may be in the continental United States. One might be in Mexico and one might be in Mississippi. I'll have to check that. But, and then a caution that the product contains natural rubber latex, which we all know there are many people that have allergic reactions to. And that's really what the caution is about. It's, I don't think anybody ever reads this stuff. And I'm wondering if, someone who is young and maybe, less experienced, that would end up with some sort of a irritant, to their skin or inside them, would even move along to address that with a medical professional, just because of potential embarrassment or being found out. It's a personal choice to have sex. So anyway, I don't know where I was going with that one.
There are condom materials that would be compatible with Vaseline and and oil-based lubricants. Some of which have been historically popular because they're cheap and available, or because they don't wash away and need to be replenished as soon as a lot of the water-based lubricants do.
So what the 3 risk factors are for labeling of condoms? Number 1 is obviously risk of unintended pregnancy. Number 2 is risk of transmission of sexually transmitted infections. And number 3 is incorrect or inconsistent use, diminishing the effectiveness of latex condoms against the risk of the unintended pregnancy or the STI transmission. That's it. So
isn't latex also like a very skin-friendly fabric, and it's only going to affect a small of the population, right?
Yeah, and I think that a lot of latex allergy, at least with gloves, is kind of airborne through the powder that they're actually using. So a lot of people will use like nitrile gloves, but a latex sensitivity can progress to anaphylactic shock over time if individuals have issues with latex. So it could potentially.
Plus the smell. Good God, I'm so glad I don't use condoms.
Well, for many
I remember
reasons,
that back in the day.
Yeah.
So, do you think that based off of what you just said there, that before someone becomes sexually active, they should probably go to a doctor to get an allergy test done for the types of condoms that they could be used?
That
would be a good idea, just because the first time you're getting lucky, you put on the latex and now your dick's got hives. It's just to be a terrible story.
It could be.
Well, she's gonna look at you afterwards and go, "You son of a bitch!" You're gonna no. I swear to God, it's just latex.
When somebody decides to get sexually active, I think that they should make a choice. Be like, I need to figure out the type of condoms that they got.
You should put one on you. You should just. That's what I did when I was young.
Or just
go home, put one on you, try one on, see how it
explodes.
But with a possible.
Looking at your friends.
Idea. This is a terrible idea.
You know what? You could
fill them up full of yogurt and throw them around the classroom.
How about studying microbiology and like 300 or so classes of infections that can be sexually transmittable, and all the things where condoms really are not the magic bullet that they're widely advertised as, and which all leads back to the idea of being a little bit careful with partner choices and practices.
Yeah. Well, and welcome to the chat, Killian. Don't troll on me. I'll have to send a condom your way.
Oh no.
What the question that we started out with was what percentage of sex toy, condom, or lube users have ever read the FDA information on products that they buy. So I pose that question to you.
Yes, I have, and I think that at least my guess would probably be like 35% actually read it.
I don't even know if it's that many. I feel like I personally am pretty up on that kind of stuff.
Specifically in my case,
Are you there?
But is it that chick that I was with at the time was very, very much into knowing like specific types of lubricants and what was inside of them and how it was going to affect her, which was fair. So every time I went to the store to read up the FDA thing.
Well, that's good. I mean,
and I just continue to do it ever since then, just because it's a thing now.
Yeah.
What store did you go to that was distributing FDA paperwork?
Oh, distributing the FDA paperwork. No, none of it. It was it's online stuff that I do. I don't actually get anything distributed to me. I just go ahead and Google it.
Yeah, exactly.
It'd be really cool if they had those papers, but I just the old internet.
Exactly. So let's move on to batteries. I want to talk about batteries.
I do have to actually pop off for a bit, but I might be back.
Oh,
all right, later.
Have fun popping off.
I will all the time.
So one of the things that I wanted to talk a little bit about and just kind of bring this up is why do we think so many sex toys have these crappy batteries, bad battery systems? Why aren't they made more like industrial power tools like Makita, Hitachi, Bosch?
That's a question that I was asking, a decade or two or more ago.
I mean, we've got that technology out there. Why are we going, with something that's less effective?
Marketing, volume of sales, consumer willingness to demand better made products.
Well, and maybe what I need to do is send a little email to Lilo and ask them, since they do have kind of the market on a higher end toy, and they do last a very long time. What I'm not going to ask them what their battery systems are, but what their thoughts are on just battery life, because I know that they will replace their product and they're all USB charged, unlike the device that I put in kind of jokingly when I sent out the everyone email to let them know that we were going to discuss this tonight, where that was something that I would be fearful of being electrocuted if I had that in me. So the other, does anybody have any comments regarding just the battery systems, bad battery life, or the fact that even some of them have like real batteries still inside them?
Well, that having a low voltage device, allows making a lot of aspects of it more cheaply. You have an AC powered device, depending on the country and whether you try to comply with or evade safety standards, you may have to use more insulated, materials, do double insulation or safety testing, plug over and insulate over external hardware, whereas that's eliminated in low voltage systems.
Well, speaking of like speed controls and safety testing, I doubt that there's actual safety testing or a standard on, I don't know what else I would call it, the drive of the.
Yeah, is your Lilo device UL or CE listed for intrinsic safety?
I think it is UL listed.
And that can often apply to certain subsystems and not the overall device. A lot of UL listings, are deceptive if you look at the details.
Well, would it be marked on the device itself?
There'll be a stamp that says UL
CE.
or CE.
What's
CE?
It's CE. And they are on, actually every single, I've looked at 2 so far. They both say CE. I don't even, I do have a cheap one, and this is like an Amazon product.
Yeah, so that's basically it's a set of standards for electronic devices that basically ensure you that it's not going to blow up in your hands. Amongst other things.
The cheap one that I have here from Amazon is also CE listed.
So you can't market it in Canada if it's not CE listed, is my understanding.
Yeah,
CSE would be Canadian.
Okay.
They also have on the Lilo ones, they have, it looks like a picture of a battery and crossed out. Well, I wonder what that would indicate.
Would that be a European, hazmat, don't throw in the trash? Recycle, not trash if it dies.
Oh wow! I wonder if any of these ever get recycled.
And then if it's designed for sale in Europe too, it might also say ROHS, ROHS.
No, none of them have that.
Okay, because that would imply generally, lead-free solder on any wiring or circuit boards. In other words, the regulation on hazardous substances, reduction rules that have been in effect for several decades in Europe.
But so go back to speed controls and vibration.
Okay, I have this Swedish erotica dual egg box in my hand that came from a pre-Giuliani and National Family Legal Foundation Disneyization of 42nd Street. Swedish erotica, design registered, patent pending, UK registration, which could just be like the design of the artwork on the case, but three batteries, 2 eggs, and 2 speed controls. The speed controls are really crappy rheostats that seem like they could very easily catch fire or malfunction, and of course a little made in China sticker. The basic. And eggs where if you don't chemically seal them, they'd be very difficult to clean. The way the plastic and wiring is done. So, there are products like that probably shouldn't be made for use in the way that they are. But then the stores and the consumers, demand hitting price points, and the rent's expensive in stores like that.
So, is there any regulation on like speed controls and vibration?
If they're digital devices in the U.S., there'd be 47 CFR 15 unintentional radiator emission standards, but not on the reliability or safety, which might fall under UL or similar if they're certified that way, which is not likely.
I'm kind of shocked that all of these regulations.
I've worked with federally regulated fields, and Title 47, is the FCC and U.S. Code and CFR. So that's one of the more familiar areas. Dealt with FAA, EPA. As an activist personally, I've dealt with a lot of Department of Interior, child agencies, trying to get changes to international cross-border radio signal protection standards done. I've dealt with State Department, also helping Friends and Peace Corps agriculture products. I guess I've also been a high-level admin internationally in what prior to the web was the largest non-commercial adult PBS network in the world for a fair number of years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So,
plus may have done a few things personally.
Oh my. Okay. There are a couple questions like at this point I don't even want to ask because I feel like Loki, you'd end up like talking about it the entire time, and I don't want everybody to just be like, wow, like what's going on with this dude. But like one thing that you mentioned to me when we were talking about this a few weeks ago, because I was under the impression that there were no FDA regulations for sex toys, but you brought up that there were a few that are coming in under Medicare and funding through insurance, through Medicare insurance, because I thought we had talked about if there were no FDA regulations, then there's no consumer protection for recalls or bans on these items that were
there could be Federal Trade Commission issues if a product is unsafe, even if it's not otherwise regulated.
And the Toxic Substance Control Act as well. So if you're selling any chemical in the United States, at least, you have to register that chemical or the mixture under the Toxic Substance Control Act, and there's some testing requirements for that as well.
Right.
So, that's not FDA, but it's a separate safety regulation that you just
and there may be SDS requirements, for it to be, handled in the course of commerce for just about anything and everything, even if they basically say that there's nothing regulated in
it. Is this how like the crayons years ago that ended up with lead in them that came from overseas got taken care of, or toys with children that have maybe lead paint on them?
Children's toys, there are some nonprofit public interest law and testing groups that try to acquire and evaluate anything that becomes popular enough. So there's an awful lot of stuff that doesn't get subjected to that. And then there's a difference too if you have U.S. companies that are trying to not get themselves in trouble in the various legal and marketing pitfalls. They may do more than is legally required. On the other hand, if you look at what Walmart and Toys R Us have done to kids' toy markets, and even Toys R Us being bankrupted anyway,
oh my God! You made me look, Loki. You made me look for something. And I Googled the nonprofit testing. Is there a nonprofit testing organization for sex toys? And there is one. It's called Dildology. And they've actually done some work on the testing and had some unsafe toys taken off the market.
Mm-hmm.
So mainly with use of PVC. So sorry for the interruption. I was just shocked.
You mean as structurally unreliable, or versions that leach oils and other
toxic substances
mm-hmm.
and carcinogens that cause cancer?
Mm-hmm. One of the issues with silicone rubbers that you've talked about is that just listing that kind of plastic is in use isn't really enough, because there are a lot of different grades and variants of silicones, and unless you know something about the industrial variants and something about the production of the individual products, or have a high-level reverse engineering lab and the time and budget to do a lot of industrial analysis, it's very difficult to tell which ones are going to be chemically clean and stable long term, and which ones may break down or leach various substances, immediately or after 1 year or 3 years, or still be in pretty good shape after a decade. And that's a matter of specifying product design and enforcing that, assuming you're going to China contract manufacture, see that your production vendors actually obey your specs. And it's a bit of a challenge for an end user to do that.
Yeah.
The label alone, unless you get into a complexity of engineering standards that doesn't show up on consumer products, and most consumers wouldn't understand if it did, is fairly high.
Interesting. Does anyone else have anything? I can't believe, I just looked at the clock and I can't believe we've been chatting about this for an hour and a half already. That kind of flew by pretty quick for me anyway. Maybe I was into the conversation. That's so weird.
So how does your hot dog work if you plug it in?
That's not mine. I got that off of the internet.
Oh.
I think.
Is it Carol Queen or somebody else who runs the sex toy museum in San Francisco?
Yeah, I actually I didn't go in it because it was super expensive, like tourist trap. But in Amsterdam, I took pictures of the outside of the sex museum, which was kind of interesting. They did have a lot of, those types of toys and other things that were in the window when I went. But I'm sure that there are probably sex museums all over the place. I'm going to post something in the live feed chat on that nonprofit. I just think that the name of it just cracks me up.
Of course, how about leathercraft sex toys?
How about what?
The leathercrafts.
Leather?
Yes, floggers, whips, cuffs, harnesses, pony outfits.
How do you regulate the safety of something that's essentially a weapon that people are using on each other on purpose?
Yeah, that's you mean like riding crops and things like that? Yeah.
Okay. Well, riding crops aren't intended as weapons, but how about 14-inch Bowie knife? For people who do some fire play and then waxing and then a heavy cutting scene.
Yeah, that's not my cup of tea, frankly. I don't know. Maybe somebody else can do that discussion.
That requires a certain amount of technical knowledge as to the difference between it being artistic and pain or stimulation inducing versus potentially emergency room visits.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things where there's a fine line there, and people who do it had better have more technical skills than internet videos and discussions cover.
Yeah, that's beyond anything I even want to know. I'm not into the whole blood play. I know that is some people's gig, but that's definitely not something I'm even wanting to explore or know about, frankly.
How about the double spiral twist at the handle and the hook end of a short dog leash made by Mike Derrick, a.k.a. Buck the Pony at Waterhole Custom Leather?
Never heard of him. Never heard of it.
He's been on network TV, although, he used to be local to me and somebody I had to train in some of the, online technology years ago.
Yeah, sure. You were probably holding his leash.
No, that would be an Italian retail store owner from Long Island in one of those neighborhoods where she somehow thought that she could keep it secret from customers who might not understand how much of an intense dominatrix she was.
Oh my. Goodness.
Even though she was publicly listed under her mundane name in some of the databases that people like me maintained. Yeah, it's part of functional networks.
Oh my.
Okay, what's this? Versus, let's see.
My goodness. I don't know. Belts?
One of those I produced, another was manufactured. Or how would you keep this clean? That one's a velour purple leather short flogger, that might be used around sensitive spots, unlike the other two, one of which is a short-tailed whip, and the other which is something more difficult to describe.
That's funny that you bring that up, because there was a time where you saw a lot of women wearing these little raccoon tail type plugs. And I thought to myself, like, that's gross. Like, how are you actually going to keep that clean? Like, there's no way to sanitize, a cloth attached to a plug, a metal or a latex or whatever you want to call silicone plug. I think that would be not the brightest thing to use more than once.
Or some of these ponies will have a butt plug and a harness holding a big horsehair tail, that can get rather expensive, but it becomes a very personal device. But, there's a limit to how much you can clean something like that.
Right. Alrighty, you guys.
Anyway, by the way, the leash I was, asking about before, Mike, aka Buck, is a pony boy, and he's, but if in the class where they come, you need a $10,000 or $20,000 budget, for the various harnesses and headpieces and tails and hooves and saddles and things that they wear in that game.
Right. You guys can continue talking. I am gonna beg out of here because I've had a really long day and it's my day off, so I'm ready to go crash.
Up too late last night.
Yeah, I was chatting on one of Pangburn's channels till 2:30, and I was like, oh my god. But it was a good convo, and we were at, hey, Doolittle, do you wear a CPAP machine?
Why do you ask?
Because you snore like a bear.
I thought I was muted.
No.
Well, thanks for muting me.
We kept muting you, but I was like, you need a CPAP machine.
No, I fell asleep in my chair.
I think you literally stopped breathing. I was trying to perform CPR from far away for you. I think I woke you up. I think I woke you up once by laughing super loud.
And that might be what got me to hang up the Discord.
Yeah, you finally did, but we
were like, I'm asleep.
No, you're good. You're a good sport. I wasn't saying that to be mean.
No, I get it. No, I snore super loud.
Yeah, you might actually like a CPAP. You never know.
Yeah, I usually wear nasal stents.
Gotcha. And it opens it open. Alrighty, you guys. I might pop in a little later if I take a nap and wake back up, but I'm, gonna call it for you guys can continue if you want, but I am exhausted. And I'll tell you later about my my experience looking at a log cabin in the mountains. It was kind of cool. anyway.
So you don't want to think about like using, like capsaicin is hotter than Bengay alternately with surgical lidocaine ointment on adjoining parts and seeing how they combine. It would probably be more sensation than the, yours and mine product that was advertised as being so earth-shattering.
I'm sure it would be a lot of sensation, and that would not be good. I do know from personal experience with exposure to pepper spray, when you take a shower, take it cold and put your head down so it doesn't drip down to your lady bits. So anyway. Alrighty, you guys. Have a good one.
Night.
Bye.
Anyway, that wasn't as lively as I thought it might be. Anybody else still around?
That's a hard topic to get a ton of involvement on.
It takes a lot of focused attention to actually look through some. If you want to, look at some of those stacked regulatory nests to sort out what you're looking at and understand what it means. Where you may have to go through 100 documents and compare how different products and companies and eras relate.
So the question that I would rather answer is the federal government the right agency to regulate toys of kind, really?
Well, actually, one of the questions that I had DM'd with Zombie earlier was about, to what extent, do we want to get, government more involved versus less in toys? But there are some aspects of them, I think, on some of the material safety, and if you have digital devices, some of the, potential radio interference, and where they clearly do belong under certain limited areas of regulation in some cases. But an awful lot of the existing system is really, a political house of cards and not a serious functional system. So what would effectively improve consumer knowledge and safety?
Other than government agencies, because we already do have a lot of regulation on things. Maybe having more metadata available through our, the major suppliers. Like when you go on Amazon, you buy a bottle of Good Head Deep Throat oral antiseptic spray. What do you get? You get a picture of the product. You get 15 5-star reviews that were paid for.
Amazon reviews are a consumer fraud, and they ought to be prosecuted for that. But Amazon just has so much money. I've talked to prosecutors about going after Amazon. Their legal tactics are dirty enough and well enough resourced, that they scare off criminal fraud prosecutions for how they operate.
So if there was a government regulation, I think the most useful one would be forced labeling requirements. If you're selling basically a bottle of chemicals, which these things are, if I'm selling chemicals to a company, then I have to provide an SDS along with those chemicals when I sell them. And Amazon can sell you can sell a bottle of chemicals to a consumer with essentially no information, right? You don't even you almost can't even find the list of ingredients if you're looking for
it. And SDS doesn't have a full list of ingredients. It just has certain disclosure ranges, and there's a lot of proprietary.
And that might be, it might be not enough information on SDS, but a lot of times at least it'll give people an idea what's in there. And if there was anything the government mandated, I would say disclosure of what the contents are and what the hazards are associated with those contents. I think that's a really good step.
I've been at talks with above average education adults where someone's asked, put up a list of chemicals and said, what do you think this product is? And on 100 people, I've been the only one to recognize it's a bottle of shampoo, and and thinking probably ivory, which I turned out to be correct on because of one of the ingredients that they're the only one who tend to use. But the better quality lubes that I was just going over, and that I pulled out to look at, have a list of basic ingredients on them, probably in order of prevalence.
Sure. And, they're in order of weight concentration.
Mm-hmm.
On the label, so you got water, glycerin, and propylene glycol, right? Does anybody know what that means? Does anybody know what that means? How much propylene glycol can you eat before it makes you shit yourself?
You can take a gallon of pretty disgusting shit over the course of a day for a colonoscopy prep, can't you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, what is that? 17 grams of propylene glycol is what the prescription is for pre-colonoscopy, right?
You know what the other common usage of of that is for people to consume?
To consume in propylene glycol?
Yeah.
Light Italian salad dressing.
In much smaller quantities. It's also sold to people who are taking too many narcotic pain meds for opioid-induced constipation.
Yeah. Okay. That's what it is. It's a Miralax. That's what it is.
There are prescription forms of it that are used for OIC.
Okay. Sure.
There are a lot of things that exist in both prescription and non-prescription in different strengths. I haven't paid attention to the weaker ones, but I haven't taken it that way. I have had colonoscopy, and that's loads of fucking fun.
Were you awake for it? Were you awake for it?
No, I got date rape drugs.
Oh, okay.
The hospital I had it in probably should be prosecuted, or at least flagged.
Well, no, they do get prosecuted. They do get prosecuted, I guarantee you.
No, but they waited until I had IVs in me and was partially drugged, sitting on the table to shove a stack of forms in front of me. And I noticed that they had a statistical risk disclosure that had some basic math errors in the statistical disclosure so that it couldn't be accurate. And of course, the issues of risks involve a lot of surgeons' art, and as well as some of the sanitation of endoscope issues that have been a problem in the medical industry, and the protocols have changed a lot in recent years. But they really ought to have accurate information in their disclosures, and not have people who are pushing stuff that's erroneous. But as well as what does it mean that they don't give you the paperwork until you've got an IV and you're out on a table and under stress conditions? Or you're going to say,
so my question is, the paperwork they give you says that you agree to pay them everything that they ask for, even if the insurance company doesn't cover it. And you say, okay, well, where's the other side of that contract where you agree to ask the insurance company before you start doing the work? And they say, no, we're not gonna ask the insurance company first.
Mm-hmm. On the other hand, if it's Medicare coverage, it can be a felony to give misinformation to the patient on the insurance details, even if they're dependent on third-party contractors' interpretation of things. There's really no way for the doctor to know, but it's at most a civil liability issue if you're an incompetent doctor and you do procedures wrong. It's more important, in the Fed's understanding, for the doctor to know things that are largely unknowable by him, and play the games with the Feds.
So don't you think there should be something more like Underwriters Laboratories that does certify these things that we were talking about?
There are a fair number of safety and function issues, and that wouldn't be a bad idea. But in order for that to be done in a way that makes much sense, we probably need to have a less batshit crazy treatment of sexuality in general.
I mean, like how much money does it cost to get one of these things certified? So I know that when you're certifying consumer electronics, getting a UL listing costs in the range of like $20,000 to $50,000 just to get the testing done.
And then there may also
what's the volume on these sex toy markets? I have no idea. Are there 1,000 different companies that sell 1,000 units each a year, or is it like mostly, is it more centralized where there's 5 or 6 companies that are $100 million companies?
I haven't seen that kind of stat in a long time. And let's say the Doc Johnson brand used to be on a lot of stuff, but that seems like it's disappeared. Online marketing seems like it's opened up unbranded sources of a lot of things.
Yeah, so that diversity of products will really go down if you force people to get these certified. I mean, you might be able to have premium products that get a stamp like UL on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's, from the libertarian perspective, I think that's preferable to having a federal agency regulate regulate the products themselves.
And just have some kind of serious liability for companies that try to skip that step.
Well, you have liability, right? You have liability. If somebody gets hurt, they can sue you for a product causing you harm. We already have that in place.
Of course, when you've got direct sales from China, that's practically non-existent. Because there are restrictions on international litigation, not to mention the costs involved. But then when you've got the whole Bezos scam structure, that intimidates government prosecutors from going after them for a cause, including taking down accurate negative reviews and ensuring that fake ones get posted for a lot of products.
I've got a better one for you. My wife just bought a thing the other day. I don't remember. It was like some like butt wax or something like that, right? Like the wax for hair removal. And along with the product came a coupon that if she gave a 5-star review and then put in the code with her 5-star, then they were going to give her like a $25 gift card or something like that in the mail. So Amazon lets that kind of garbage go on. Yeah, hey, we'll pay you if you give us a 5-star review. Well, okay, was it really a 5-star product? Is it something that caused you harm and you just want to get your $25?
I've been badgered by companies that I've posted accurate critical information on at times, and Amazon has actually come after me, for posting that it's illegal for certain wireless microphone and electronic products to be in the country, or that certain batteries and LEDs had specifications nowhere near what they were publishing. They've taken down all sorts of accurate information, but they'll leave up fake 5-star reviews. It's not exactly what their contract terms say. Anyway, they just get
not very many people on today, huh?
I think I just got cut off somehow and just came back. Anyway, no.
You were here. There was another person, Claire, came in and left.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, where did I put? One of the things that I pulled out and pulled down to the other end of the house, someplace where I'm not spotting it, trying to put some stuff away. No. Anyway. So are we still up on the stream promotion on YouTube or something?
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Science is fake. That's his name. Science is fake.
Oh.
Yeah, it is.
So we were just having a conversation with the moderator who left, was asking about sex toy regulation and what should happen. I think it was a should conversation, right? And it turned into everyone educating each other about what really are the regulations. It turns out there's a lot more than anybody really realized. And so the question that Loki and I have been exploring is whether the federal government is the right agency to be regulating, or let's just say to be rating or regulating the safety of consumer end products, I guess, in general. I mean, not just sex toys. Sex toys obviously is something that's uncomfortable to talk about, but
You know what the big field is where the existing regulation is really difficult to justify, and where, like going back to agency certifications and consumer fraud exposure would probably, make a big difference in cost and getting government out of scam systems. What if we banned, the whole system of drug approvals and regulation, but had private certifications, on the efficacy and safety, and a huge liability if you violated those, huge exposure if you had caused problems and you didn't opt to get those, which, is, how do you justify, Schedule 1 drugs, including things that do have medical purposes, or a system that presumes a medical basis for use and not the religious and cultural self-medicinal traditions or spiritual substance use? Or the idea of antibiotics and resistant strains are a serious public health issue, but if somebody commits suicide with narcotic overuse, is that a legitimate government issue?
Yeah, that's. I'm gonna. I don't know. I think that. All stuttering aside, I'm more in favor of less government regulation and.
But
the Schedule 1. Who's to say what the potential for it is? Whether there's a beneficial use outside of the maybe 1 or 2 listed uses, right?
You mean like the idea that heroin it has no medical use, when in fact it actually does.
Well, and the government fell completely flat on its face with the OxyContin and hydrocodone and these other highly prescribed narcotics that basically they're, doctors are given a pretty free range to prescribe those to people that may or may not really need it, and you end up with an epidemic. That the government that was there to regulate it, and they did sort of already apply the existing rules, and then fell flat on their face and didn't do anything to stop the epidemic.
The other side of that is we have an aging population of couch potatoes with a lot of legitimate reasons for painkillers and to be pushed to do alternative health practices to avoid them. But, it's difficult to mandate that people make healthy choices. But there are doctors who've been subject to essentially an extortion and lynch mob regulatory scheme, and and threatened to or maliciously prosecuted for acting responsibly, or threatened into not prescribing medically indicated painkillers for a lot of patients. But if I have $8, I can buy enough Tylenol to exterminate a classroom of school kids. How many scheduled drugs have that kind of potential?
Aside from fentanyl? Aside from fentanyl?
Or if I can go into an auto parts chain with a U.S. brand on the door and buy some Chinese unknown source generic parts, that they may have some liability if they fail, and and do steering or brake work on a car, how does the potential public health and safety impact, if I do defective steering or brake work and go out on the highway, compared to if I'm at home and I take, twice as many, synthetic, opiate painkillers as the label suggests, whether, they injure me or not.
I don't the disagreement to make an argument there.
But if you compare with the Tylenol LD50 relative to recommended dosage, or the safety issues of working on your own car or hiring a mechanic, or buying a more expensive brand of parts is optional, it's really hard to justify most of the restrictions of the RX drug system that does more to inflate prices and direct money into government and corporate political donor systems.
Well, isn't that what it's designed for?
That it sure looks that way, and that's blatantly illegal, isn't it? If it is true, which it seems to be.
I don't know if it's illegal to.
It fails, It fails a whole number of basic tests for validity of laws, which judges are not inclined to enforce, because so much of their system would fall apart if they did. Excuse me. Anyway.